Hopefully the chat is working today and we got that fixed. But I have a couple of resumes up. I actually have 4 already, all set. But if you want to submit a resume, you want to get your resume reviewed, I'll say this probably multiple times in the stream, but I have on the screen here, you can see a place to send the resumes to. You can either send them through that email address, or you can join the Discord and put them in there if you want to join the Discord. I think it's a great place to be. It's super fun. Welcome and thank you for testing out our chat. Thanks, Mohammed. Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining the stream. And Binamra, I'm not sure if I said that correctly. Saad, thank you for joining. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. And hopefully this is valuable. Hopefully this is super valuable to everyone. As I go through these resumes, if it's yours, I have redacted some information. So in general, if you want to send yours forward, since resumes are a little bit different than online portfolios, it's something that I do want to redact. So like addresses and phone numbers and such. When I do portfolio websites, I don't usually redact as much just because it doesn't, I mean, it's on the public internet already. But for resumes, I think since that's a little bit more private, I usually do redact. So before you send your resume into that email address, if you could redact private information, otherwise I will do it, but it takes a little bit of time. So I've prepped a couple of them, the 4 that we have here. If your resume is the one that I show and you want to add some more context or ask a specific question, that's what the chat is for. So as I'm going through a specific resume, if it's yours and you want to ask a specific question or say, hey, this is why I chose to do that, or what do you think about this design choice? Anyway, ask it in the chat and we will move forward from there. But I think it's probably time to get into the actual value of this video and we'll jump into a resume. Let's see, we'll start with this one. I have removed the name, but as you can probably tell, that was probably in vain because names are everywhere in like URLs and GitHub names, so it doesn't make that much of a difference. But anyway, let's dive right into it. Okay, so front-end developer, hopefully you guys can see this just fine. Actually, I'm going to use this draw feature so I can see. Front-end developer, I think that's fine. I would say right here is a good opportunity. Let's see if I can draw on this. This is a good opportunity to use exactly what the role is showing. And one of the things that a lot of people talk about in applying for jobs with resumes, if you just take your same resume and you just blast it out to, 50 different jobs, it is possible that you'll get a call back and you'll get someone to respond and say, hey, let's do an interview. You can significantly, at least, from the stats that I've seen from the Bureau of Labor and all that stuff, it's if you're individually looking for jobs, and you can at least double your likelihood of getting an interview if you take each job and you customize your resume, not completely, but at least a little bit for that job. So I would say apply to fewer jobs and take the time to make your resume a little bit more specific to that job. That will make a huge difference. But anyway, front-end developer here is what it shows right at the beginning. That's fine. I would use that opportunity to use exactly what the role says. So the exact role title, that's what I would put right there. Okay, skills section. You've got HTML and CSS. I feel like those aren't necessary, but if you only have 8 on here, we can include them and they're fine. There's only 8. I would say we've got, front end, and then a database here. These are databases, and then frameworks. .NET is a framework. I would say things like .NET, Express, React, those right here, this little triangle of skills, those are a lot more framework related. Those are specific skills. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, those are basically inferred. I might even do 2 columns here. So this first column could be like your frameworks and even maybe database stuff. And then on here it would just be like languages or skill sets. And that could be, C# if you're writing in .NET, or HTML, CSS. You could talk about how your JavaScript skills, and you could have just languages on the side. That would totally make sense, and that would be valuable. My drawing needs some work, but hopefully that's helpful for the skills section. I do like these icons. I think it's super helpful overall design-wise on this. I think the icons and the color scheme, like the blue and the black, it's really good. I think the design's really clean. Education right here on the top, I don't know that needs to go so high. I would say I don't see an experience section, so I think that's interesting. That's a big part of what you have. I would say experience should probably go first, but knowing that usually these things are for junior developers, you're trying to get your first job, so maybe you don't have experience, That's totally reasonable. I think we want to highlight some of the things that you've done, even personal projects, as roles. A lot of times you can mention that you're a contractor, or if you're working for as a freelancer, you can mention those contract positions. You can mention the companies that you worked for and worked with, and that's useful. But right now we've got a high school in here, finished and got a diploma while in school, took design classes as well as venturing. Hold on. So I'm just gonna note spelling on here so you can fix it. Obviously, we could just spell check the resumes. I think that'd be super valuable, but it's pretty difficult sometimes if you're making like a PDF or special formatting. So anyway, I'll just mention that here. That's not how you spell venturing into the .NET tech stack. I would say venturing into the .NET tech stack does not convey a lot of experience, or like, oh, you're starting to gain that experience. You're just saying, oh, I kind of looked at it, or I touched on it a little bit in high school. I don't know that this sentence in general adds a whole lot of value, so I would probably leave the high school. Maybe if you got a good GPA, you could put that on there. If you took the ACT or the SAT or something like that, you could put that there. Otherwise, I don't know that your high school experience needs to be on your resume at all. So if there's not a specific reason to add it, I would remove it, and then you can replace this section with either certifications or specialties, whatever you want to add. Okay, let's talk about projects. Again, there's no experience section in general, but projects kind of works that way. Typically, when you're trying to hire a new engineer, you want to see that they've worked in professional circumstances before. So having an experience section is quite valuable, even more than just the projects. Projects are good, but including that as well. Okay, RPS API. I love this. So the icons here, really, really good. I like that a lot. I would love to see, in addition to this, some sort of like link to, I wonder if there's an easy way. Wow, that's huge. Okay, hold on. Can we make this smaller? It's way too big. Okay, we'll figure this out. But if there was a link on here, that would be really cool. I'd love to see that so that I could view what this was. I mean, the images are good, but I'd like to see a little bit more if I want to explore and see what you've done, especially if you're a front-end developer. That visual element is super important. Let's see. Got a comment from Roddick. Thank you for commenting. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Inclusion of HTML and CSS is not the worst idea. I've worked with very junior profiles. They did manage databases and the overall logic, but they've not been able to create a simple table in HTML. Wow, that's quite surprising. So I think as a front-end developer, obviously you need to understand the concepts of HTML and CSS and templating languages in general. I think that's an interesting point that I hadn't thought of before. If the people you've worked with, they're juniors, they manage databases and stuff, I would probably consider them back-end devs anyway. So maybe they do have more experience with those languages and those skill sets. But that's interesting. I think when you have so many skills, and the main reason that I usually recommend against having HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is when people have like 15 skills on their resume and it just crowds everything out. So if they have like 8 years of experience in React, but they put like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and so React is fourth on that list, even though that's what they've done, I mean, for basically their entire careers. I have seen that, and that's something that I definitely recommend avoiding. So great feedback. So if you don't have all that many skills on your list, it's not bad to include HTML, CSS. Obviously, it takes you time to learn these things, so I'm not against you having those, but personally, if it distracts from other skills that you spent more time on, I would look into potentially removing them. So thanks for the feedback. Okay, let's read through this actually. The API was developed for RPS using the MERN stack. Good, I see all those icons there. The goal of this was to, comma, don't need that comma there, allow the devs to be able to build blog-like posts for their websites. You don't need like in there. Also, integrated is spelled wrong. GitHub API on dashboard for commits and issues. Okay, so this is actually quite interesting because applying the API, integrating the API is something that a lot of companies do need. People with experience in how a REST API works, how to connect, how to make all those things work smoothly. So I would highlight that a lot more. So instead of just describing the project, which is what you've done here, I would try and turn this into an experience section. And I would say things like integrated the GitHub API using OAuth or whatever you needed to do. Use those skills. What tools did you use? How did you do those things? You already mentioned the MERN stack, which is great, but I would also spend more time talking about how you made that integration work. So hopefully that's useful. Hi, Sinan. Thank you for joining. Excited to see you on the stream as well. Okay, moving into a couple of these other ones. Again, I love to see these icons. Super cool. Oh, this highlighting thing doesn't work all that well, but good to see the icons. That's useful. You got HTML, CSS. Let's see. Website for Game Studio for their newest game 4. Utilizes is spelled wrong. The RPS API allows the dev to make blog posts. Again, okay, it seems like this is the exact same thing. So if I was a recruiter and I was going through your resume, at this point I would stop reading. So I wouldn't even look at the rest of your projects on here, because I would say, okay, they're just reusing the same exact thing twice. You know, they're talking about RPS and an API and devs making blog posts, so they basically did the same thing twice. And I know that may not be the case, but I'm hopefully explaining what a quick review would look like from an HR leader or an HR recruiter, whoever's looking at your resume. That is what would happen to me. So I would rather see 2 or 3 bullet points on what you did, the technologies you use, the tools, the languages, and then move from there. I actually think I have reviewed this person's individual portfolio. Pretty sure I have. And I really liked it. So I would say transforming this resume a little bit would be super beneficial. The Discord landing page, that right here, let's see, am I drawing now? Yeah, this is not valuable. This was a project where I cloned the Discord landing page. That tells me absolutely nothing. What issues did you run into? What tools did you use? How did you make it happen? That's super important. Tip calculator as well. I don't necessarily need to know what the project itself does. Tip calculator is very self-explanatory. I already know what it does. So this is not helpful to me. I would rather see what you did, how you did it, and get a little bit more of almost your personality in this resume, more so than this is what this is what I built, because it just doesn't teach me all that much. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Let's move on. If there are any questions, again, make sure you throw those in the chat. That's kind of the whole point of doing this live, is so that we can interact like that and you can ask any questions that you might have. Hopefully that is valuable. I'm going to just make sure I'm keeping everything straight on. Okay. We're good on time. Moving on to resume number 2. Let's dive into this one. Okay, so very different as far as design already. We got a lot of stuff up here at the top. And then it's also 2 pages long, which I would say in general, I would say 2 pages is too many. Most of what you've done can be put onto a single page, but I've been wrong before and there are reasons for me being wrong. So first, let's go into the resume and then we'll talk about whether 2 pages is too many. Okay, front-end developer again. Let's get a highlight going on here. This is an awesome opportunity to customize your resume easily for the role that you're looking for. Super easy to just say, hey, this is what I did, but I can also convince the recruiter that I'm already the role that I'm looking for. So that's a good place to put that. Thank you for redacting your email and mobile. That's awesome. So let's dive in. We have the portfolio link, GitLab, LinkedIn, and Stack Overflow. Super useful. I know I've mentioned this before with, that's interesting. It's a lot smaller than it was before. Let's make it a little bigger. I've mentioned this before with Stack Overflow. So unless you have a significant presence on Stack Overflow, I would say this isn't necessarily a good ad. So if you don't have like a significant amount of karma or credit, whatever they call it now, on Stack Overflow, I don't think that you need to have that here, and it does add space. And all of this that I see at the top is just taking away from me being able to read the rest of it. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, but just realize people start at the top of your resume and they go down. So the most important things should definitely be at the top. I can already see that you've got some front-end experience here, freelance experience. I would love to see that higher up. I'm already having to go almost to the bottom of the first page to read that. Okay, front-end developer who loves to code, who has an eye for design, proficient in React, including Gatsby and Next, Vue, and Svelte. Loves using pure CSS and creating aesthetically pleasing designs. From scratch, building clean and structured web applications. This doesn't tell me anything at all. Experience developing single-page applications. I would probably just say like SPA there. Again, it depends on who's reading your resume, so I'm not against writing that out. I do think this is just taking too much space. I would remove this one. This top one is good. Proficient, I think, usually I just see that as a replacement for relatively new. So you're either experienced if you have a few years, or I just wouldn't put it at all. And medium scale websites. What does medium scale mean? What is a medium scale website? I don't know. I don't think that's a huge value add. I think that might be, usually it's reaching a little bit. If they're say medium but it's really large scale, that's uncommon. So usually it's difficult to try and convince someone that it's a medium scale website. Performant and compliant with web application standards. That's useful. I think you might want to describe what those standards are. Are you talking about like WASP security standards, or are you talking about like accessibility standards? That's useful because sometimes companies are trying to specifically find resources that can help them with that. So I like the ad, but I would be more specific. Okay, moving on. Skills section. This is what I'm talking about. This is a large skills section. I'm not necessarily against it being a large skills section, but this is an opportunity where simplifying might be useful. So, version control system Git, dependency management tool NPM, build tools Vite. These are just single elements within an entire category. That is not incredibly useful and takes 3 extra lines that you don't need to use for that. Having them on here is valuable. NPM, like package management, all that stuff, Git is useful. Those things are valuable, but you don't need to put them on their own lines. I would say other tools or other technologies, and then just say version control. You don't have to say Git, or you can say Git, parentheses, version control, Vite, NPM, any of those things you want to add. That's useful. But you also talk about how you have significant experience with, Next, Vue, and React, so NPM is relatively standard there. I don't necessarily think you have to remove it. I'm just thinking having categories for those is not necessary. Okay, programming languages, JavaScript, TypeScript, Elm, Shell script, markup languages, HTML, CSS, Tailwind. Tailwind's probably more of a framework, but I guess it makes sense because it's a CSS framework. Okay, libraries and frameworks, React, Gatsby, Next, Vue, and Svelte. I think that's helpful. I do. I think the check marks might be a little distracting here. So you might want to have 3 different columns. So like column 1 is your frameworks, column 2, again, I am not good at drawing on a screen with a trackpad, but markup languages, and then libraries and frameworks, and then on the bottom, like with a single line, you can say other tools, and you can have that stuff here. That way it's just easier to see. There's just a big, it looks like a word cloud almost of all those skills. So hopefully that ridiculous drawing is useful to organize that. Okay, moving on to the experience section. So February 22, this is what I wanted to look at. So if you're going to have your resume be 2 pages, the only reason to have that is you have at least 10 years of experience and significant experience that you can convince someone that you should have some sort of director or executive role. That's the only time where I've seen a 2-page resume make sense. Again, a lot of this is personal preference, but I have hired, I don't know, probably 35 engineers, junior and senior, over the last 5 years, and I don't spend a lot of time on resumes. Obviously, I'm spending like 15 minutes per resume here, but in general, when I'm looking to hire new engineers, I'll spend like 2 minutes maximum on any of these individual resumes. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're looking for, but you just want to make sure you realize people aren't spending a very long time on your resume, and if it's 2 pages, it's going to take them even that much longer. They're probably never going to read this stuff at the end if it's 2 pages long. It might be a little bit difficult. Anyway, welcome, Yusuf. Thanks for joining. Excited to have you joining the chat. Thanks for using the chat, by the way. That definitely makes the stream more exciting. Since we're a little bit further into it, before I continue, I'm just going to jump back to this. If you do want to send in your resume, you want to get it reviewed on this stream, we probably will have time for 3 or 4 more. I might need to speed things up a little bit, but send in your resumes over here to resume, there we go, resume@fedoctech.com, and I will review it. If you could redact it a little bit, take out any personal information, and then I will throw it up on the screen and we'll figure it out. So diving back into this resume, the second page, let's talk about your experience. Front-end engineering consultant is great. I would say company should be a little bit bigger. I'm assuming that's the company and that's the location. Tech stack, this is really good to see. I love seeing the tech stack. This is not a useful one. Successfully met all the website's requirements by collaborating with the production team. I mean, I would hope so if the project was like any sort of success at all, but it doesn't necessarily give value saying I did my job, essentially, right? So you're saying I was an engineer and I did what I was supposed to do as an engineer. Found new ways to improve the website. What new ways were those? Like what does that mean? I want to see what those are. You might notice that I jump around in bullet points a lot. That's what I do when I'm reviewing resumes anyway. So created accurate web pages based on provided Figma files. The underlining here is kind of distracting because I would almost say Figma files is more important than accurate web pages. And maybe you want to say, transferred the Figma designs from the design team into a pixel perfect front end. There are lots of other ways to say that, but just creating accurate web pages in Figma is the most important part there. Optimize the website's responsiveness and mobile friendliness to ensure a smoother use. Again, it's a lot of words to just say like mobile friendly and responsive almost are all the same thing. So I would simplify that one significantly if you keep it at all. Made the JavaScript, JSX, and CSS Tailwind code more efficient by implementing the dry software principle and decreased code amount by 50%. So 50% of their code was just repeated code. Wow, they definitely needed a consultant. So I'm glad they hired somebody. But I would say improved efficiency or improved code efficiency by 50% using standard software engineering principles. I think that makes more sense than a lot of these words in this bullet point. Okay, improved maintainability by making the code more readable. Not incredibly useful because making the code more readable, are you adding comments? Are you adding structure? Again, I would lean on the fact that you as a consultant came in with solid software engineering principles and you were able to make it even better. You were able to improve like the overall structure of their engineering team by adding in these principles. I think that's useful. Optimize the application for maximum runtime performance and scalability. Again, all of those things, responsiveness, runtime performance, scalability, efficiency, maintainability, those 5 things all came from the fact that you implemented standard software engineering principles. So I would talk about the principles you implemented. You don't need to say dry, don't repeat yourself. Honestly, the don't repeat yourself kind of takes away from that. So if you want to say dry, just say dry. Good. Okay. Overall, I think 2 or 3 bullets per experience point is ideal. You don't necessarily want to go more than that, and you want each one to be actionable. How did you do it? What did you do? What tools did you use? Okay. Freelance front-end developer. Freelance is kind of not a great thing to add to a resume because it kind of just means I'm a developer, but I didn't have a job, so I tried to find roles on my own. Now, having been a freelancer, I know that it's not a bad thing to freelance. It's great, and it's a good opportunity to have experience with lots of different skills. I'm just saying from a HR perspective, it's more difficult to see freelancer on a resume. So in general, I would change that to contractor. So freelance development contractor, front-end development contractor, and then just talk about maybe 2 or 3 of the clients that you worked with, maybe the bigger projects that you did. Like you mentioned Upwork on here. I wouldn't mention them as your employer. I would specifically mention the clients that you worked with, maybe 2 or 3 of them, and those could even be separate experience sections if the projects were big enough. Okay. Business developer, Crescent Technical Services brought in new clients to hire us for building waterproofing services. I like the idea of adding things like you worked with clients and you made that work, but I think you probably want to simplify this. Maybe highlight more of the things that you actually did as a freelancer or as a contractor, and then I would probably remove this one. Again, this whole resume does need to be 1 page, so maybe utilizing different columns or sections would be valuable there. Projects, publications, certificates. Certificates are valuable. I think that's good to have on there. Education, that can be a super simple section. You could probably just even add that in the corner, or even on your top bar, you can mention where you went to school. Languages is actually quite useful, especially if you speak multiple languages. So having that on there, maybe that can go in your skills section if you have the columns. Obviously, you don't want it to be like this because then it will kind of get mixed in with programming languages. I would say definitely needs to be 1 page. Simplify where you can, and as much as possible, maybe these things need to just go on your website. Or maybe you want to pick the top 2 that you think are absolutely phenomenal and you want to add them. I even see that you have this kind of like more at my personal portfolio website, which is good. Pick the very, very best stuff. Like this should be definitely your highlight reel. You don't want it to be too wordy because people just won't read it. That's the problem. And I've mentioned this in portfolio reviews too. If it's too long, then you lose the opportunity for an HR manager to read what you want them to read. So, okay, we got a couple more people joining in. Glad you fixed the chat problem, Yusuf. Front end, I can't read that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but hello from Ukraine. Thank you for joining us. Super excited to have everyone on here and excited that the chat is working this time. It was so disappointing last time. Okay, hopefully that was useful, and we will continue on to resume 3. I've gotten a couple come through in the email. Thank you for sending those over. I will join those. I'll bring those on as soon as these ones are completed. Okay. Next one, web developer, Angular, Electron APIs. I like this. I like the way that this is written out. I think it makes sense. You're a web developer. You talk about the things that you do. This actually does look a lot like the way that I would set up a LinkedIn profile. And I think that's a good choice. I think that I like this a lot. I would probably even again use this opportunity, this like subheading, to specify something that is related to the job description that you're applying for. Okay, summary of developing software. Software is singular for my clients, friends, and myself since the summer of 8th grade. Wow. I would probably just put an age there. Since I was, what's 8th grade? 14? 13? I would say since I was 13, or since I was a teenager. I started my journey by learning HTML, CSS, and PHP. I've been developing challenging projects ever since to improve my skills. I'm looking for a positive that can make me use my web development skills. These skills being, okay, this is a lot of words. So I would simplify this significantly. Oh, hold on. I recognize this now. We had this conversation. So I take that back. This specifically is, I'm just going to call you out. I think, yeah, this is Yusuf. So this is you mentioning exactly what you're trying to do with this resume, which is totally fine. I wouldn't add it to your resume. I don't think it needs to be here, but obviously we need it for this conversation to know what you're trying to do with your resume. Looking for a position to make me use my web development skills, these skills being Angular, Node, and TypeScript. Okay, so I would definitely put those 3 as your 3 up here. Those are the 3 main ones that you want to highlight. I like that you have your links here. I think it would look even better if you used the, like, just 4 across like this and it was icons. I think that would be better because, I mean, I'm not going to be typing this in to LinkedIn, so I'm just going to be using a link anyway, so this isn't quite necessary, and it saves you some space. Okay, skills, web development. Okay, you have categories here, which I really like. This doesn't need to be an indent though, so those can come, this whole section can come over this way and be left justified, and then the bullets can be for this. And you don't even need the bullets here since you have the kind of the dots to separate them. Okay, web development, JavaScript, TypeScript, Node, Angular, Electron, React Native with an asterisk. Learning, interesting. I have not seen it done like this before. So here are my thoughts on what makes this valuable. I would put the things that you know the best at the beginning, the things that you know the worst at the end. As long as you have enough confidence in it that you can build a project using that tool, I don't think you need this sort of qualification. So I mean, I can't strike through very well because I can't use this little draw tool. But haven't used in a long time, that's not what I want to see. So let's take the example of an HR manager. If I'm looking to hire someone and I need someone who's done PHP and I see it on your resume, but then I see haven't used it in a long time, I'm already going to throw out your resume. So essentially, put it if you think you could actually do a job for that role, or remove it if you don't think you could. It's one or the other. You don't need to have these qualifications on there. Okay, courses. Crash course on Python by Google, using Git and GitHub with source tree. I would take this out. The reason is, I think most of this should be noted inside of your skills section. So I would say all of these courses should represent themselves by, the fact that you have them in your skills section. If you want to add some sort of certification, let's say the Python gave you like a certification of some sort, you could say Python, what would it even be called? Like Google certificate for Python basics, whatever that's called. That's what I would put on there. That would be more valuable. Okay. Oh, I see. You got the idea for your headline from my LinkedIn tips video. Glad you watched that video. I really liked that one because those are some of the things that when I see them on people's LinkedIn profiles, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is clear, easy to see, and it's a lot easier for me. So I appreciate it when people do that. Let's talk about your projects. Weather-based music recommendation project. I talked about how you don't really need a description, but having the quick one-liner, that's fine, especially because you talk about the technologies later. I like that you have those technologies. If you do put projects on your resume, make sure you note the technologies that are used. I don't know where these links go. Will it tell me? Yeah, so it goes straight to the web app. I would say having a link for like going to the web app here and then also a link to the code would be valuable. If you have that, if it's open source, if you can share that. Simple to do, cross-platform to-do app made with Electron and UI kit. Cool. Make this one line though, so it doesn't take up too much space. Especially because right after it you say Electron and UI kit. Note, I gathered feedback from many people about the upcoming features and design decisions during the development. This I think could be rewritten. I would say something like, instead of I gathered feedback from many people, conducted user research and implemented feedback through standard design discovery process. That's what I would say, personally. But anyway, think about how you can reword some things to make it a little bit more succinct and actionable. Okay, pure JavaScript prototype for an Angular project was made for a client. That's not necessary. It's either in your experience section or it's in your project section, so you don't need to say that. Pure JavaScript prototype, I would say something like MVP here. Oh, I can't write with this. MVP. Ooh. There we go. Okay. Pure JavaScript MVP project. I later adapted the prototype to Angular and turned it into a mobile application using Cordova. Smart helmet. I'm just going to move on. I don't necessarily think this is necessary. Arduino project detects motorcycle accidents by plugging accelerometer data to a free fall equation. Wow, that's fantastic. How cool is that? That'd probably be your first one. I think it's creative. The reason I think it's creative is because it's something that I don't see. Like this seems like something that you might ride motorcycles and you're like, this would be really cool to have. I want this, and I think that's really cool. Technologies, Arduino and accelerometer. I think you used a whole lot more than that, like complicated mathematical equations and probably libraries and all. I would put a lot more into your technologies there. I think you did a lot more with it. I made this project in 9th grade to join a national contract. Unfortunately, I never joined it. You can read it in detail on my LinkedIn profile. I don't think that's useful. I made this for 9th grade but never used it. Like that doesn't tell me much except for the fact that you didn't follow through with that competition. But the project is so cool. I would definitely say find more detail on my LinkedIn profile. And you don't even need this like note thing. I would just say find more detail on my LinkedIn profile and make that a link. Experience, just one experience. This needs to be higher up. Your experience should definitely be a highlight of your whole resume. Freelance software, again, we talked about freelance. Software development contractor, I would probably say. That's just it's an easy way to swap. Buy on Look, I think that's something like an Upwork or Fiverr. I haven't used it before, but that's my assumption. 14 orders, 11 ratings, 5 out of 5 stars. What were your like 2 or 3 biggest orders, like the largest dollar amount orders? And I would put those as 3 separate contractor experiences because you only have one right here. In general, you can say just contractor if you have 3 other positions you want to talk about. But if it's just the one, I would take freelance, turn it into contractor, specify the clients you worked with, and make each of those its own experience section. Because you did cool stuff, Discord bots, cross-platform desktop apps. Those are really cool. I would definitely add those as individual elements. Okay. Oh, it's the Turkish version of Fiverr. That's cool. I'm probably not saying it correctly then. Okay, let's continue. Next one. We've got front-end developer, React.js. I'm going to... The color is interesting. I mean, having color on a resume, people go back and forth. I personally think it's cool. It's unique. If I'm hiring for a job, I'm usually reading about probably 50 to 100 resumes in like a day to try and find the right person for the job, and that's a ton. So having color on a resume when it's not overdone and there's not like crazy images everywhere, I like it. I think it's helpful, and it it's just a break from the monotony of everyone's regular resumes. If they were all colored, I probably wouldn't like it as much, but I do kind of like it. Okay, so the sections here. We've got front-end developer React.js. Again, I like how this is written out. I think it's good. I would say you might even add more stuff here to the React section, so React and what else. And front-end developer can be specified based on exactly what job you're trying to get, what role you're trying to get. Junior front-end developer, you don't need junior on here. If you worked as a front-end developer, you worked as a front-end developer. Maybe there were senior developers helping you, but you were still a developer. I wouldn't put junior in there in your work experience. Front-end developer, infomist, I need way, way more here. What did you do? How did you do it? What technologies did you use? I want to see 2, 3, and since it's a short resume, maybe 4 bullets. And I know I'm going way past what I normally would, but I would put some bullets in here to make it more valuable and useful. And this is what I want to read. This is the section that I actually care about when I'm trying to hire someone. Personal projects are good. I don't know what you did at Infomist. If you're in the chat and you want to mention it, we can start to wordsmith some ideas for you on here as a group. Otherwise, let's dive into your personal projects. News application using React.js. Okay, so news application, I would name it, whatever you want to name it. And then React.js Media Stack API, those can be like on a separate line or a subheading talking about the technologies you used. You've got C code. You have the tech stack here. So just bold that or highlight that or italicize somewhere to make it different, make it a subheading, and then you don't need this up here. Latest and popular news in 7 different categories with source and country provided. Cool. I think that's useful. It just kind of tells me what it does, but it doesn't tell me what you did. You know, like a lot of this stuff, you try to think, could I have just copy and pasted that from someone else's code? Yeah, probably. As far as what it does, the functionality. What they can't copy paste is what you did and how you built stuff. Dark mode toggler using X. Infinite scroll using Y and Z. News with different countries and different languages around the world using localization frameworks. Or if you did that manually, if you have toggleable options using HTML. I'm making stuff up here, obviously. But depending on what you did, I would try and add that in. Is this a little link? Is this whole thing a link? Okay. So I like that this is a link. I like that you have the little icon there. But you could also just put a GitHub logo right next to the news application title. That way I can do that without wasting a line here. Okay. Weather application, PWA, progressive web app. That's what that stands for. Accurate weather forecast for almost all cities of the world. Again, cool. Using what? How? How did you do that? You're not trying to sell me your weather application. You're trying to sell me your skills. So I think you want to mention exactly how you did stuff. Weather forecast for the next 24 hours using what? For the next week, that's basically the same thing as the 24-hour one. Again, you're not trying to sell me this product. I'm not looking for a weather application. I'm looking for an engineer. So you want to tell me what you've done. User can save a location as his or her home location. Cool. How? Are you using local cache to save that information? All that stuff. CLive. I love this. CLive, C code, useful. Just put those as links though. And you don't mention a tech stack in this one. So you have the tech stack here, but you don't have it in this next one. This is a huge red flag, but let's talk about this for a second. So obviously, it's a typo to just accidentally have an extra category or section in there, project name. This actually happens way, way more than you would expect. I probably, maybe something like 20 or 25% of the time with junior engineer resumes that I'm looking for to hire someone, is there'll be some sort of placeholder something left in their resume. Just take that extra look, just look through it, make sure that you don't have that stuff, because it is surprisingly common. I'm just saying. All of this can be an icon cloud, by the way. These 4, you don't have to have the URL on here. I would just have them be links, because that's just as useful, and it's a little bit distracting with this text here that I don't really need to read. You've got your education on here. If you have something useful to put in there, like an ACT score or some other college examination score or your GPA or any sort of distinction that you had in any of your courses. If you don't have any of that, those are the first things that I would add. If you don't have any of that, the next step I would say would be to add like some of the key courses you took. So if you took like a database systems course or again, just making stuff up, but if you did like data structures courses, any of those things, you can add those. Adding courses is a last resort. First, I would try something like your GPA or your ACT score or any other sort of distinction that you might have had. Okay, skills. HTML, CSS, Tailwind, Bootstrap, JavaScript, React, WordPress, Strapi, and Firebase. I've never known if this is Strapi or just Strapi, but who knows? I don't need to know how to say it. Okay, a lot of these things I would put higher. HTML, CSS don't need to be at the top. React probably should be the first one because I think that's what you put. Yeah, React is your main skill up here at the top. So React should be at the top of your skills list because you're going to read them from top to bottom. So that's an important thing to note. I think this is good. Let me just check the... Okay, so Mohammed, thanks for reaching out and telling us I'm working on Infamous for making WordPress themes using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so what would I say for that? Probably something like, as a front-end developer, you were taking client requirements and turning them into custom PHP. You made WordPress themes, so you're probably using PHP at some element, but you probably want to mention that you took the requirements, you turn those into designs, and then you turn that into custom front end for your client, and some way to represent that flow. And you want to talk about what you used. Did you use, for requirements gathering, did you use some sort of project management tool like ClickUp or Jira, Confluence, all that stuff? Or did you use Figma or Sketch for the designs, for the back and forth with the client? Like how has that gone? I think you really want to talk about what you do, what the experience is. And if you want to step back, and you mentioned that you're not necessarily a great copywriter or good at explaining those things, if that's difficult for you, I would go talk to a friend and they would be like, hey, what do you do for InfoMist? And just keep in mind what you explain to them and how you explain it, because that is the way it's a lot easier for you to come up with words, to come up with explanations, especially ones that can be understood by non-technical people. You want to try and design that sentence so that it's valuable, and you can keep editing and things like that. If you're in the Discord, just throw an example and we'll give you some feedback on what that bullet point should look like. I think that'd be an interesting experiment, so hopefully that's valuable. Okay, so I have a couple more in the old email inbox, so I'm going to swap over here really quick to this so that if you do want to submit your resume, we have probably like 20-ish minutes left. Hopefully that's valuable to people, if it continues to be valuable. Send your resumes into resume@fedoctech.com, and while you're doing that, I'm going to jump over to my inbox. I have a couple of them already. Thank you so much for sending them in. I'm just going to make sure that they are... Okay, so the one I have so far is not redacted. Okay, so I have a couple. I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to redact it myself. And then we will be ready to show it. So while I'm doing that, one of the interesting things that I've seen recently is I was looking at LinkedIn the other day, and I just sorted by entry-level positions because I thought that'd be interesting. Turns out like 50 to 70% of the entry-level positions that I saw while I was looking at that were like 5 years of experience, which is absolutely unbelievable. And from what I hear from other people looking for jobs, is that is not all that uncommon. So if you're looking for a job or if you're looking for a new role, you might want to try other keywords than just entry level, because entry level is, hold on, that had some more detail in it that I need to redact. So anyway, when you're looking for jobs, try and use information that's not just entry level, because entry level jobs sometimes have a lot more experience required than you would think. Okay, let me just make sure I redacted this correctly. Oh, it looks like Mohammed responded, so Figma is the one. So yeah, mention Figma, definitely. That's something that a lot of companies are using these days. That's super valuable to know how to take Figma designs and turn them into something useful. Okay, we're jumping into another one. Thanks for sending this over via the email. We have, I think, 2 or 3 more in there right now, but if you want to submit one, please do. Happy to look those over. If we don't have time on the stream, I can definitely give feedback still. I'll probably just respond to your email. Okay. Let's see. Front-end developer. Once again, we're just gonna beat this into the ground. This is an excellent opportunity to customize your resume for the specific role that you're looking for.
CS graduate and adept front-end developer focusing on React development. I'm eager to continue my career by joining a hardworking and interactive team where I'll continue expanding. Okay, I'm already done reading this. I don't mean to be rude. I really don't. I know that a lot of people spent time writing those intros, and they do really try to make them as valuable as possible. But if I feel like it's getting too wordy, I kind of stop reading it, because I'm not necessarily... I don't have a ton of time when I'm looking at resumes. Also, 2006 Time Magazine Person of the Year. I know that's the year when they put you on the cover, which is really, quaint. I am seeing it like a lot now. So at this point, I'm kind of getting, I don't know. Maybe leave it in there if you want to. Maybe it's creative for some people, but I feel like I've seen it way too many times. I like that you have the links here. This is useful. I would turn those into icons. I just think it looks better without the text clicking. Overall, though, I should say, before I dive into the specifics, I feel like I'm already zeroed in on text, but design of this resume is really good. I think it's really clean. It shows what you need to show. You've got the really, really clear section headers here, which is good. Maybe a few too many bullet points, but if these are your only experiences, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just know that I'm probably not going to read all of them. I'll probably read 2 from each section. I'll read them all here, obviously, but if I was actually going to look for a job or look for an engineer for a job, I probably would only read 2 or 3 of each, and then I would make that decision. So you've got your skills over here. Industry knowledge. Is that really industry knowledge? React, HTML, CSS. I would rename that. That's probably more like... And even then, I don't think those things are really grouped well together, because you've got other things down here, like Redux and Node, but React is up here. So I think these are all technical skills. I would probably divide your technical skills into front end and back end, or because you can do Material UI, Tailwind CSS, Bootstrap, styled components. I would remove that because that's not really a tool. And then you can use any back end stuff. It looks like basically all of this. You've got kind of frameworks. So PHP, React, React Native, and Node. Leave those in as frameworks, Laravel, and then the other ones can be other specific skills. See that Red X says based on the resumes, the front-end developer profile is way more popular. There you go. So if you want to be a back-end developer, now's the time. Okay. Let's see. Education, Bachelor of Science. Okay, so this is what I'm looking for. Just super, super basic. U.S. International University, Africa, Bachelor of Science. You can just do BSc. It might save you a line. In Kenya. That's actually really cool. Graduated in 2020. Is there anything else you could put on here, like an ACT score or some sort of honors or anything else? If not, add maybe a couple of courses that you took. Otherwise, there's just a little bit too much here. Certifications. This is super useful. Front-end developer career path, Scrimba. I don't necessarily know what that means. Frame it more like an actual certificate than... It sounds like a course right now. So it sounds like I completed this course, or you want it to sound like I achieved this certification. So you can use, like we talked about with the Google one, you could say like Scrimba front-end developer, and that would be it. That would be your certification. Scrimba front-end developer. Instead of saying the career path or any of these things, it makes it sound more like a course, which it probably is. Okay, front-end developer and junior front-end developer. Okay, that's fine. It shows that you kind of grew in your role. You switched, freelance. Okay, so this I would remove and turn that into contractor. And this is an opportunity to shorten these into 2 or 3 bullets. And if you have been contracting since November, you should have a couple of clients that you have significant projects with that you could talk about. So I would definitely put that in there. But let's read through a couple of these. Collaborated with stakeholders during development processes to confirm creative proposals and design best practices. I don't dislike it, but what did you use? Like, what did you actually do? In the action makes sense, collaborating with stakeholders, development processes, but what did you use? Did you coordinate them via Jira or Figma or any of these things like design thinking, design tools? Those are all valuable things to keep in mind. Created a user experience that fetched, parsed, and formatted and related to React components. How did you do that? Like, that sounds really cool, but I would make sure you mention exactly how you did that, how you made it work, maybe any issues you ran into, how it improved the site. Built mock designs, that sounds very similar. User interfaces with modern JavaScript frameworks, HTML, CSS, improved user. This is great. So this is what I want to see. You developed user interfaces using this framework, using these tools, and improved user satisfaction by 40%. You might want to explain that a little bit, or you probably have to in an interview situation. Designed and developed web applications using React.js to increase target audience engagement by 15%. Again, cool. I love these last two because they talk about what you did and how it impacted the company. If I'm being honest, I probably won't even get to them because I'll stop reading after these first two. You do the same thing in these, created mobile responsive user experience, allowed cross-platform accessibility. I think you could probably just remove this section, just say cross-platform accessibility. This increased the number of 5-star user experience user interface reviews by 360%. Yeah, any percentage over 100%, I'd probably just say 3.6x. Assist the development team in maintaining 8 websites. Across what technologies, what did you use to coordinate all that stuff? That's a lot of work, so you want to make sure you're getting credit for that. Implemented front-end technical solutions to meet project requirements for creation of 5 new web pages. Cool. Again, what did you use? Just front-end technical solutions doesn't really mean anything to me. And I see similar things. Worked in an agile collaborative environment to receive design requirements, peer program, and test applications. This is cool. I think this is valuable. You did all this stuff, and agile is very popular these days, so I like that. Overall, I think it's good. Design is well done. So thanks for submitting that. We've got a couple of questions. Okay, new viewer, welcome. Crackosaurus, thanks for joining the stream. Have my co-op coming up next semester. Wondering if you could take a look at my portfolio site real fast. There's not much content yet. I mean, I'm happy to take a look at it. I think that's pretty easy. Feel free to throw a link in the chat if you can. I'm not even sure if they let you put links in chat, but you can try it. Hey Jaden, is a letter of recommendation or commendation enough to put on your resume? It's given the top students in a university. It's given to the top students in a university for a specific year, but isn't on the level of a dean's list. Oh yeah. So if you're going to be putting, like, especially in the education section, a letter of commendation, I think that's great. Or you could put like commended for and then a certain element, like if you were commended because of your skills in a certain research project or for your GPA. Even though it's not dean's list, it's absolutely something that you achieved and you should definitely put on your resume. The education section would be the best place for that. If you have a link to it, if there's like a repository where that exists, awesome. Otherwise, I would just put that you put it on there. I think that's useful. Okay. I'm not going to get to all these resumes, I can already tell, but I will do my best. I've got a little bit of time, so I will keep going, and then you guys can just watch the stream later if you don't have time now. Let's see. I don't see a lot of people redacting their resumes, so unfortunately that's going to take me a little bit longer. I have to prioritize the ones that have been redacted already because that saves me time, but I will do my best. I'm just going to add these like blue boxes in to cover stuff up, and I'll do the best I can, but if I don't get it perfectly, I'm very sorry. I think that's gonna be good enough. Okay, so we'll save that. Hopefully that saves correctly with the blue square on it, and then we can view that one. Okay, let's dive into, can you guys see that? Okay, yeah, nailed it. Again, if you want to send in your resume, boom, right there, resume@fedoctech.com, and I will review it. We're probably getting to the end of the stream, probably in the next 15 minutes, but we'll get through as many as we can. I'll try and speed things up a little bit. I've probably spent a little bit too long on each of these. Okay. Personal information, redacted by me. You're welcome. Just saved your identity. Other personal data. I think that's weird. That's pretty weird to have on a resume. I would take that off. Because I don't even think it's legal for an employer to ask or know about your civil status. Military service, one and only. I don't know what that means. I think it's cool. I mean, if you're a veteran, I think that's super cool. But I don't know what one and only means. I might just not understand the terminology there because I am not a veteran, but veterans are awesome. I really like them. Okay, work experience dates October 2020 to current for this company, job title software engineer. This is way too short. Okay, so the format is interesting. It's not a format I've seen a lot, but main activities and responsibilities needs to be a much more significant section, and I would use bolding creatively here. I would probably put this at the top, right at the top there, and make it bold. And then the employer should be second. Wow, that's not very legible. Okay, the employer should be second, and then date should be third. Main activities and responsibilities should be 2 or 3 full bullets. Web-based application programming does not mean much to me, and it's not going to help me think, is this person qualified for the job that I'm trying to hire them for? Okay, accomplishments, project grade 100%. Graduation project, smart camera to help blind people. The camera uses AI-powered object detector that detects common objects like cars, trees, and translate them into spoken words via earphones using Raspberry Pi 4B. So like whatever I look at, it's gonna like describe it to me. That's kind of cool. It's a really cool idea. And as far as like a graduate project, it seems really interesting. I would put some sort of link to either GitHub or some sort of demo on YouTube. That could be incredibly valuable. Education and training, I see dates. Again, starting with dates is not incredibly valuable because I want to know what you did. Like that, the first thing I want to see is what did you do? Whereas the only difference between work experience and education training, both of them, the first line is the date. So I don't really know what's going on. Name and type of organization providing education and training. That, like, as a category heading is way too long. I mean, name is perfectly fine. Al-Shabaab Private University, cool. Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering, awesome. Principal subject, again, these categories are way too long. Grade point average, 91%. Is that a GPA? I don't know if I've ever seen a percentage GPA. Typically it's something like 3.7, or I guess a 91 would be, I don't know. I'm not going to do that math. But usually that's what a GPA looks like. Average grade, you could maybe put a percentage there. Personal skills and competencies, languages, Arabic and English, C1 level. That's interesting to put the language on there. I'm not sure if that's like a TOEFL certification level, but it is useful to have so people realize, especially because some companies actually have that specifically. Technical skills and competencies. Microsoft technologies, intermediate. It's like Word and Excel and stuff. I've seen some people put it on their resume. I don't think it's necessary. If you're at the level where you're like programming in PHP, React, and Next, you know how to use Word and Excel. That's pretty standard stuff. This whole section, web development in general as a technical skill, I would take this whole section out. I think you need to have this on one page, and taking sections out will help you. Taking this section out specifically, and then probably this personal data section as well, that might already get you to one page. Software, programming languages. I like the categories here. This is useful. I might put a little extra spacing in there so you can see the difference. And database management systems, that can all be on one line. Maybe just change it to database systems so you don't have this hanging at the end there. PHP, JavaScript, React, Redux, Node, Express. I like the order you have these in. So this is actually one of the first times that I don't have a recommendation to change the order of things, because you have HTML, jQuery, CSS at the end, and you start with frameworks. I think that's great. So leave that how it is. I would simplify this DBMS to be a little shorter. This is not useful. If you're only going to put methodic and organized with your organizational skills, it doesn't add much. Social skills and competencies, again, you can put this on a resume, but it doesn't tell me anything because it's not backed up by anything. If you want to explain that you're a good leader and you're great at public relations, I should see that in your experience section. You simply telling me these things does not give me a lot of confidence, just because anyone could write that on their resume without having to back it up. Honors and activities. This is leading my team, to participate in Syrian collegiate programming contests after winning Aleppo collegiate. This is cool. I like this. Definitely keep this. These stay. I like these. Interest, learning new skills, reading articles about new technologies. I'm pretty sure everyone is interested in those things, so I would be more specific. Learning new skills, what are you learning right now? Or reading articles about new technologies, what are your favorite blogs and YouTube channels? Obviously YouTube channels. But what are your favorite things to look at for new technologies? If you're like big fan of Linus Tech Tips or big fan of MKBHD, like throwing that on there could be a good way. If someone says they're like, oh, I love watching MKBHD, and I was going to interview them, I think that'd be super interesting to be like, hey, I saw that video too. Like, I love watching MKBHD. He's great. And it's something to talk about. So usually these sections are good to build some sort of rapport with your interviewer. So I would put more specifics in there because these are too generic. Okay, awesome. I think we have time for one more resume. I was intending on making this an hour maximum, and then the resumes that I didn't get to, I do apologize. My intention was to get to all of them, but also last time we only had like 3 people on the stream, so I guess my my estimation was a little bit off there. I'm just gonna really quickly try and edit this personal data, and then we will move forward. Okay. Awesome. I think that is showing on the screen. So let's jump right into it. I don't see any new questions in chat, so we'll go. Okay, education, experience, personal projects, skills, certificates. Sections wise, I'm not super excited by it because it is just all black, which again is totally fine. There are definitely ways to have an all black resume be more interesting. Like heavier bold on these section titles, I think is useful. That would give me a little bit more. Let's see, I'm going to draw on here. Or you could put like those little divider things that they have, either lines or dots. These dots need to be bigger, but yeah, so if you put like some sort of divider in there, and there should be more space on the top than there is at the bottom, and that just kind of groups everything a little bit better. So overall design-wise, not bad, but I think could be slightly improved. Bachelor's in Computer Applications, Mangalmay Institute of Management and Technology, November 2024. Okay, so you're still in school. That's what I'm reading from this. Our anticipated graduation, November 2024. And that's where the university is at, okay? Class 12, so this is high school. Unless there's something in high school specifically that you achieved, like a good GPA or an ACT score, like I mentioned. I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over again, so I apologize for that. If you don't have those things, I would remove high school experience, and that saves you a little bit of space. And you can maybe put some of these things on different lines, like, you know, anticipated graduation 11/2024. Experience, you've got freelance here. I would remove both of these freelance words, just say front-end developer and SQL developer, because you don't have to say freelance. And you didn't necessarily work for Upwork. You worked for a client. Now, there are ways to say this. Now, the best way would be if you have significant projects on Upwork that you can say, I worked with this specific client, or, you know, did this specific team work. Put those and put the actual clients that you worked for. If you can't say the clients or the projects you feel like were too small, you can say various clients or various companies. But saying Upwork, I don't think adds much value. So I would remove that. At the very least, say something like various clients so that you can group your experience together. But I would try your best to get actual company names on there. Even if they're lesser known companies or companies that no one's ever heard of, it will be valuable to have that. Now, talking about your actual experience here, front-end web development and SQL development is pretty obvious. If you're a front-end web developer, you've been doing front-end web development, I would assume. So you should probably add 2 or 3 bullets underneath each of these in what you actually did. And the way to do that is to say, you know, what you did, how you did it, and why it mattered. So if you can answer those 3 questions, I built responsive websites using, the how would be using Figma and React and, you know, plain HTML, CSS. Why did you do that? To increase market size of the company, or to improve user accessibility by X% or by a certain amount of people. All of that stuff is so valuable. What, how, and why. Make sure you mention that in every single one of your bullets, and that way I can see, okay, this person's really making an impact to the companies they've been at so far. I'm starting to get parched, my goodness. Okay, let's continue. Same thing with this one. What, how, and why. I'm just going to type that again because it's so important. Every single bullet should say what, how, and why. Maybe I'll make an entire video about how to write bullets for a resume. That might be an interesting one. Okay. Personal projects. This is useful, I think, especially if you do not have a ton of work experience. Portfolio website. Built my own portfolio website, hosted with GitHub pages. Tools used. I like this, but this is not the one that I would put at the front. I would put this one at the end, because personal portfolio is kind of, that's what you built after you made these other things, and it's really just a conglomeration of everything that you've done. Built my own portfolio website. It's not bad, but again, you want to talk about what you did, how you did it, and why you did it. Why did you build your portfolio website? To increase visibility in my job search, honestly. Student reservation system. Let's talk about this one. This is useful. I want to see a link, and I want to see a link to code, and I want to see a link to the live site. If possible, for every single one of these, I want to see code and live site, because if I'm interested in something or I'm intrigued, like, oh, I kind of want to bring this person in. I know they're a student, but I think they're pretty motivated. They have 4 personal projects. That's pretty good. So maybe we'll bring them in for an interview, but let's kind of see what they've done. Let's see if it kind of matches what we're trying to do as a company. But I can't click on any of this stuff. So I don't know anything about what you built, what you did. So I would definitely recommend having both of those on every single one of your projects. Okay. Built a database for credentials of students. Why? Why did you build a database? How did you build it? What tools did you use? Like you said MySQL down here, but so you built a new MySQL database to contain credentials of how many students? Of, up to X amount of students, or scalable to include up to 1 million student credentials. Did you normalize the database? All these things that you can add that just give a little bit more weight to your bullet points, I think is useful. My role was to create the database tables and store data in it and hand over the SQL files to the client. There are definitely other ways to say that. And as soon as I see client, I'm like, hold on, that's not a personal project, that's a client project. So this should be in your experience section. This whole thing right here should be, boom, right in your experience section. But I would also try and think about what are the top 2 or 3 things that you did. And that's where you start with the what. What did you do? And then for each of those individual bullets, you think, how did you do it? What tools and what techniques did you use? And then why? What was the impact? So hopefully that helps. Landing pages UI. It's pretty generic. I would probably put more, like, what was the page name? What was it about? What was the page you built it for? Was it like a marketing landing page? Built the landing pages UI of websites. That's again just saying I was a front-end developer. Tools used Figma, so you designed them. So you should say design. If you have skills in design, that is not common for developers in general. So I would say, design, like actual design work that you did. Did some research on WordPress for new design trends. Using competitive analysis or using industry research, developed new design trends for the company, developed new design language for the company. Just kind of riffing on different things that you could potentially say there, but you want to have a little bit more meat to that bullet. Airline reservation system, that sounds super cool. If that actually works, I want to see code, I want to see the live site, and this should be probably one of the number 1 things you put on there because it's cool. Like an airline reservation system, sounds like a full project that probably took a really long time. Tools used MySQL. I would hope that you used more than just MySQL to build an airline reservation system. Otherwise, it's an airline reservation database, which is a different thing, which you could also highlight, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a full reservation system. Sorry, I think I'm losing my voice, so we might be wrapping this up. Skills section. Okay, this is a big, long list, and I'm not going to read it all. So I would say put these into categories, maybe have 3 separate columns, boom. 1 for your frameworks, 1 for your languages, and 1 for your tools. So this is where you put things like Figma and Canva and Lightroom, and then you'd put Python over here, SQL over here, CSS over here, VS Code is a tool, Tailwind is a framework. That's just a bunch of lines now, so you're not going to get any value out of it like my drawing, but individual columns is super helpful to have that kind of thing. And certificates, I definitely like. Certified front-end web developer, SQL developer, UX developer. What are the certificates actually called? And that's where you're going to find the most actual value out of that section in general. So hopefully that's helpful. I know there are a couple more. I will personally respond to those that sent in their resumes that I didn't get a chance to review on this individual live stream. If you did enjoy or got any value out of this video, please don't hesitate to give it a little bit of a like. It really helps the channel as we're trying to grow and impact more people looking for jobs and existing engineers who are looking to do more with their engineering skills. So hopefully that was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.